Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 27. Chris, congratulations! You got gold!
Thanks. I did.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I got gold in my first ever Kaggle competition, solo, which is an achievement, I guess. And yeah, so it feels really good. I got fifth place, which is good. I was seventh going into the cutoff, and then I went up two places. Feels really good. So I knew I wasn't going to get first or second. Like those teams were quite a bit ahead of everyone else, but yeah, feels good. Be a fifth.
And assuming they don't decide that you've cheated, it's possible you can get bumped up even further, yeah?
So there, I sent you that message because for like a few hours they have to verify all the results, and actually a couple teams further down from me, but a couple teams did get hit for cheating. I guess they have probably automated detection. Like cheating is mostly like you use multiple accounts. That's not allowed. And there's some other things, and so yeah, so a couple got knocked off, but yeah, no, these results are final as far as I know. So yeah, I didn't use multiple accounts or anything, so I should be good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, congratulations. What weeks and weeks of hard work paying off. And amazing that you did this solo. I was looking at the leaderboard and it has little avatar icons for each person on the team. And some of them had like 7 people on it. And you know, none of them in the top that I saw was just a single person. And then, you know, there's just you, and it's just you.
Yeah.
You beat this team of like 9 people below you. Yeah, amazing. And I think a testament to like, if you, I think both of us are people that work incredibly efficiently solo. And it would be great if we could figure out how to leverage that on a bigger team. But also, this is sort of reassuring to me that, like, you were just as effective as a 9-person team. And more effective. And, like, I feel pretty good about running this one-man company. If I'm, you know, on the... It's not impossible that I could be outperforming a team that's 10 times bigger than me just by being more effective in like honing the process that I'm doing. Sounds to me like, though, having the success and a recent birthday, happy birthday, I think a little birthday present to yourself and a reward to yourself for doing the competition might be in order. Chris, would you like to tell our listeners about a recent purchase that you've made?
I finally bought the most expensive computer I've ever bought in my life.
Yes!
I made the purchase. It takes a few weeks to ship, apparently, so... but it's coming. Yeah, I did not go for the giant 2 graphics card monster that I was speccing out. I went with a more modest 1 graphics card. But it has 24 gigs of RAM, which is the highest consumer, you know, like the highest RAM you can get in a consumer graphics card. Yeah, I'm super excited.
I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited to see what you do with this machine. Zooming out a little bit, I'm reminded of like not the Turing machine, the machine that was used to break the German Enigma code.
Enigma
in World War II.
Yeah, I don't know.
Alan Turing made it. I forgot what it was called. That machine was like the most powerful supercomputer of its day, and the entire country of England pooled all of its resources together to use this machine at Bletchley Park to crack this code, and then I think the standard historical line is like it took 2 years off of the war. And like, who knows how the course of history would have gone if this machine wasn't built. And touring Bletchley Park, it is a facility. It's like, you know, buildings and buildings and something like, I think 20 or 30 buildings that when you go through the tour, it's all these different rooms, and they're talking about like, this is the room where all the people who were the computers, who like, that was their job description. They computed stuff, and like, here was Alan Turing's office, one of the brightest minds of the entire century, and here's where he did his stuff, and like, the information would flow from this building to this building, so like, the input would be from the spies that were getting the information, and then these people would process it, and then you had this whole building of like German translators, and then that would go to this building, and all the way through the complex. And then because it's a complex, okay, well, when they had to have support staff of like people to drive everybody around and people to feed everybody, and this was an operation that took a nation behind it to do this thing. And that problem can now be solved by a middle schooler with a Raspberry Pi. And here you are, as a human capable of beating these 9-person teams, who are, you know, on one of the most powerful not powerful, one of the most advanced groups of people in this industry. You're one guy, and you just bought one of the most powerful computers for this specific application to solve these AI experiments. You plus this machine is like, oh my gosh, what sort of a powerhouse is this? It's if we could be airing this episode, 40 years ago and say, this is what the future is going to be like, people would have lost their minds. They'd be like, what sort of sci-fi incredible thing is this? How many gigaflops of processing power does this thing have? What are you talking about? How is it? Does this machine take up a warehouse? No, it's in a little box. And, driving this machine, there must be an entire company of people. This must be hundreds of people. No, it's just one guy. Just one guy in his house. Like, oh man, I think it would be easy to write this off as just like, it's just, a dude buying a new computer. But I'd like to take a moment to just appreciate where we've come as a society, that you're able to do this and you're able to have this incredible potential. I would love to hear about your plans and fantasies of what's going to happen next with this machine. What will Chris Ashard be able to do with this incredible computer?
Yeah. So first of all, you always have a way of putting things that I never think about. So like this grandiose, enigma solving machine. I'm just a dude buying a computer, but yeah, it's
that's what it seems like on its surface. Yes,
exactly. But it's great to think about stuff like that. Yeah. So the main thing I'll be able to do with this machine that I'm not able to do with my current setup is these bigger image and sound challenges. So like I can do the tabular data stuff. That's like the challenge I just finished was about 1 gigabyte of CSV data, which is not that much. You can move that around. The image stuff, that's the one I was trying to do was 16 gigs. They've had up to like 50 or so gigs, and you just cannot move those to the cloud with any speed. And so yeah, having it all local is going to be a huge advantage for that. So I'm excited to do some of these challenges that I'm not able to do right now. That's what I'm looking for. Also, the reason I went for the really high RAM GPU was I'm really interested in like the creative aspects of AI, like how can you get a computer to make things, and all of the interesting generative AI stuff requires a lot of RAM, and so that's why it was important to me to get this 24 gigabyte 24 gigabyte graphics card. Yeah.
24 gigabytes.
I know,
in
a graphics card, and then the computer itself has another 64 gigs of RAM. So it's like it's absurd. But yeah, that's what.
Which graphics card is in it?
It is the RTX 3090,
okay.
And so yeah, that is the highest end NVIDIA card, consumer NVIDIA card right now. There are higher end, their terms of service actually disallow you from putting this graphics card into like server farms. There are different graphics cards for those, and then there's one of those that has a 48 gig capacity, but that's like the graphics card alone is like 20 grand or something, 13 grand. Yeah, I did not buy that one. Yeah,
amazing. That's so cool. Do you have a scale of comparison of like, to give me a sense of how powerful this thing is? Like how many of my MacBooks would it take to be able to have
it's kind of a different you can look up like benchmarks and stuff online, but it's sort of a different way of computing things, because it's not, you can't directly compare it to like a CPU, because CPU is like you do one operation at a time in order. A graphics card can do 10,000 operations all at once. That's why it's super, super powerful, because it does these matrix operations, so it's a very specific kind of operation. But both graphics, so like ray tracing and stuff, and deep learning can be modeled as these matrix multiplications. And you could do, 10,000 of those in a single clock cycle. And there's, I don't know, 3.7 gigahertz. So what's that? A lot of clock cycles per second. And so, so you can do it's like a different kind of computation, which is what makes it really powerful for deep learning and for graphics.
Neat. Man, I'm so excited. Okay. I'd love to do some sort of a math equality of like, okay, yes, it's very highly parallel, but like there's a GPU in the M1 that would be doing the same sort of parallel operations. I'd be curious to see like how can we compare apples to GTX. Oh, I didn't write it down.
RTX 3090. Yeah. So probably 3090. Your M1 probably has maybe 2 gigabytes of RAM. So that's the first difference. There's 10 times as much. And so what you can do is 10 times. Basically, the amount of data you can fit in a batch is directly proportional to how much RAM you have on the GPU. And so, as an example, in this last competition, I took my model down to a size where I could fit my entire batch in memory. I was doing like half at a time, and it increased my accuracy by about 20%. So like getting big batch sizes is like a big deal because you increase your accuracy a lot just by having more RAM and being able to do more things at the same time.
Okay, so it sounds like this may not even be a thing that can be made in a comparison, because by fitting more data in a batch in memory at the same time, you're able to come up with a more accurate model that you could not have come up with in smaller memory with smaller batch sizes. Is that right?
Exactly. And there's tricks like you can accumulate gradients, which is kind of like, doing multiple things and then combining it all together like that. So but basically it's way easier if you just have the memory to stick the whole batch in memory at once.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a type of spider that has a brain just the size of the head of a pin. And my understanding is the mechanism of how this is done is not yet understood, but this spider can solve mazes, and it can do things like, go up so that it can see the entire maze, and then just sit there for like an hour and like solve the maze, and then it goes down and goes in the maze and goes in the direct path that it can do. And no one has figured out, my current understanding, how this spider is able to do this, but it would have to be doing some sort of heuristics of batch sizing and solving little pieces of the maze and then combining it together. So like, if that takes the spider an hour, I imagine if I could increase the spider's brain by a factor of 10, it would be a difference in magnitude that would become a difference in kind of like, it no longer has to solve the maze first and then go. It can just fit the whole maze in its head at a glance and be like, oh, okay, I've solved it, and keep going. It sounds like my computer is the spider and your computer is a human person who's able to just see the maze and walk right through.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Which is cool. I don't have it yet though. I'm nervous about how long it's going to take. The guy said like 2 to 3 weeks. And so I'm hoping 2 to 3 weeks. We'll see. Man. It's like GPUs are just really hard to get right now because everyone's using them to mine Ethereum or whatever. So yeah.
Frickin' Ethereum. Those crypto bros making the world hotter and making so much money. You have another exciting announcement that I saw on Twitter that I am so envious of, because I've applied for this 3 times and I still don't have it. And there's so many things I want to do with it. You got into GPT-3.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I applied a few months ago, and I also tweeted at the guy, like the person in charge. I don't know what his title is at OpenAI, but anyway, he said tweet at him if you want access, so I did, and I didn't hear anything. And then I just got an email, and I got access to it now. So GPT-3, for those who don't know, it's an AI produced by OpenAI, and they lets you it basically lets you ask prompts, so in natural language, and it will give you responses. And so the thing that Christian's talking about is I asked it to tell me a children's story about a spaceship that gets lost, and it did. It like wrote out this whole story about a spaceship that is lost and finds a bird, and then feeds the bird's kids, and then finds his way back home. And that was the whole story, And yeah, it was kind of spooky how good it was. It was also kind of wrong and just a little bit like in a little weird way. But it was
like
pretty
the spaceship
good.
Couldn't find the ground. That seems like a pretty straightforward problem. You just keep going down.
Yeah, so it was a little bizarre, but it was also really, really good. And so I'm excited about just messing with it and seeing what I can do. Yeah.
Something I'm so curious about is we're at the point now where things like GPT-3 are better than most people at doing certain tasks. So if I took 100 people randomly and I was like, hey, write a children's story, I think the story that GPT-3 wrote would perform, if ranked and like analyzed by people who can judge these things, I think it would perform better probably than like 80 of those people. I think I would be one of those people. I'm not confident that in this moment I could write a better children's story than GPT-3 wrote. And GPT-3 can just churn it out. It doesn't require, food and money and a social security number to do this. It's just like, a couple cents of electricity, and here you go. I've done this thinking for you. And this is sort of a weird in-between stage where I think, similar to the work that you're doing in AI, where the best team is like a computer and someone who's able to program the computer very well. This feels like a weird intermediate stage because I think eventually what's going to happen is the computer can do it the best. There is no human-computer hybrid that can outperform just the computer. This happened with chess. This is currently happening with playing StarCraft. I think it's happened with Go also. I think Go has crossed that threshold of now computers are the best players at Go. And for each of those things, it used to be that the human-computer hybrid was the best team to do this thing. And so I don't know what that looks like when, if you live in a world where GPT-3 is the best children's author, how does that change society? What does that mean? And it's really, really cool to be in this in-between stage because if you're someone who knows how to use these tools, if you're familiar with how to interact with GPT-3, there's going to be a lot of really fun arbitrage opportunities of maybe you just combine this with some sort of an algorithmically generated illustration for a children's book. And now you can flood Amazon with 1 billion children's books based on every topic. And now any search term someone searches of I'd like a children's book about, a bear that goes to the moon and then, I don't know, gets dysentery. You could find that. And I think what's going to be very interesting for me is seeing what is valuable about intelligence. It would be very easy to just write a story and have that be a story. And I think humans are very good at interpreting random information and finding meaning in it. But part of the reason stories are so interesting is that they convey a lot more information behind them. There's a children's story called something about a dragon, or an invisible dragon, it'll come to me. And I'll send it to you to link in the show notes. But it's the story that ostensibly is about this dragon in this house, and the dragon keeps getting ignored, and then the dragon gets bigger and bigger, and then as soon as the dragon is recognized, it shrinks down. Well, that's a story that a computer could have written, but a human wrote it, and a human wrote it in this way that conveys this much deeper meaning of this. The story is sort of a lesson of how to live life that's being conveyed by a human who has been living in the world, who is trying to tell you hey, this is this simple way of understanding this thing, but the message I'm trying to tell you is very important. Confront your problems as soon as you can, because otherwise they'll get out of control. I think it'll be interesting to see how people need to be more discerning of the quality of information when there is so much more of it and it's so much cheaper to produce. We'll have to develop stronger filters for getting the meaning out of things. That's my philosophical rant. Those are my opinions of GPT-3. And also, I want it so bad. I'm so envious.
So GPT-3 and other AI things right now, basically, they can sort of parrot what they've already seen. That's what they're really good at. And it doesn't mean copy it exactly. So in the children's book that GPT-3 wrote me, it had a spaceship named the Spaceship Silver Star. And I looked for that term in a few different ways, and I couldn't find it. So presumably, it came up with the Spaceship Silver Star altogether. But it came up with that because it's seen spaceship, silver, and star, together many times. And so in AI coming up with a truly unique, foundational, like you said, a meaning behind a story and then conveying that meaning, that is not where we're at yet. It's more formulaic than that. But as a human, I consume a lot of formulaic content, basically every TV show, imagine Netflix in 20 years, you can pick your favorite 5 actors and pick your genre, and it will create a movie for you, we're almost there, deep fakes, combined with a script from GPT-3, you can almost kind of do that. And that's where it's going to get crazy, because you have infinitely niche topics that you can just make content for. I'm excited, and it'll also be very interesting to see what human creation means in an era where that's possible.
I'm so excited. I would just Jim Carrey. I just want to see Jim Carrey in everything.
Jim Carrey in
Oh, it'll be great. Yeah, and it sounds like science fiction, but the pieces are there, and we could kind of do it right now, and it's only going to get better. Man, and how exciting. The problem then becomes I think 20 years ago the problem was just in scarcity of information, that if you're trying to learn a topic, there's a place that you go to like the library, where you go to your one friend who knows a guy who's done something like that once, and whatever little scraps of information you can get, all right, that's what you're working with. You're trying to learn how to build a house. Okay, you go to your library. There's 5 books on how to build a house. You read them and like, okay, that's the information you're working with, which works in a world where things stay the same most of the time. Because, okay, you can consolidate a book that's all of the cumulative knowledge of how to build houses that people have learned. And that's not the world that we're living in. We're living in a world where things are changing like on a weekly basis. Things are radically different. And it's like, hey, all the problems you had before? Here's GPT-3. It's a new thing you can use to solve any problem that looks like this. My gosh, how radically does that change every industry? And we haven't even begun to feel the ripples of it yet. And I've lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that. The GPT-3, well, okay, it's gone. It's amazing. It's cool. It might come back to me.
I'm very interested to try it out. I'm very interested to get my computer here and hook it up and do all the things with it. I'm starting a couple new Kaggle contests, and so, that should be interesting. There's always like 5 or so running at a time, so I've entered a couple more, see how I do there. I still am doing my other SaaS work as well. But all this whole week was basically AI based. And so, yeah, that's what I did this whole week. Yeah.
Much more fun. Are you still doing the consulting, or did you decide not to do that?
No. So I did a little, but no, it was a very short-lived thing. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it was basically exploration to see if it could turn into something else. And partway through, I was like, I don't think this is going to turn into anything else. So
yeah. You've got AI to solve. You've got unsolved problems to get golden. Neat. I also got sidetracked this last week on more fun things. Well, that's not fair to say that you got sidetracked. I think this AI is like that's one of your primary focuses right now. I felt like I got sidetracked doing home diagnosis. I talked a little bit last week about this ERV thing, this energy recovery ventilator. I went from last month, a month and a half ago, I went from not knowing what an ERV was to now I own 2 ERVs and 3 ERV cores that I'm going to use to try to prototype like a window ERV unit. And I think every house should have this. I think this is one of the things of like building science has changed substantially in the last 20 years, that like ventilating in fresh air and not just relying on the house breathing, which was the state-of-the-art technology 20 years ago, is the way to go. Because when a house breathes, you're not controlling where the air is coming from. So it's leaking through just every little crack and hole it can get, which means it's getting filtered through your walls, and whatever gross stuff is in your walls of like insulation or mold or whatever stuff has gotten in there, now that's getting in your house. And it's much better to try to completely seal your house as much as possible, and then have one central place where the air is getting filtered and then going into your house. And because it's central, you can do this trick where you recover 80% of the heat or cold and humidity. So I found myself in this position of like, I've been learning a bunch about tiny houses and building science, and that's so much fun and like very much in line with loving building software. It's, oh my gosh, I get to see how houses are built, and looking at a house now, I can take it apart in my head and be like, okay, well, I'm looking at the siding, and under the siding would be a Tyvek vapor barrier, and then under that would be some OBS plywood, and that would be nailed into some 2x4 or 2x6 studs, and between those studs would be insulation, and then they have drywall on top of that, and that's a house. And my gosh, that's not a sentence I could have said, a couple weeks ago, and became invaluable in trying to diagnose this mysterious problem in my parents' house of why people feel bad when they're in this house. I experience it as this burning in my upper lungs. My sister and brother-in-law experience it as getting the forgettles, that they like aren't able to remember things as clearly or think about them, and they get much sneezier. My mom has had this persistent cough for the last 20 years that has just become normal. That's just like become a thing that's accepted, that, oh yeah, mom coughs a lot, and that's just a thing she does. So I set to work on like piecing this apart based on my newfound knowledge of building science, trying to figure out what this was. And in the process of this, got a whole bunch of diagnostic equipment. I got like VOC detectors and air quality monitors measuring humidity and temperature, and PM 2.5 for dust, going to every room of the house, trying to like experimentally figure out something is wrong. My dad was explaining it as like he felt like he was trying to hunt a ghost because you don't really know what's going on, but you know that you're getting some really weird readings. Like the VOC levels in this house are way too high, and they go up really high, way faster than they should after you've filtered out a room. And in the process of doing this, in testing out several different hypotheses of like, there's a very leaky barrier between the attic and the main house, and I figured out that's because we have these recessed lights in this house where the body of the light is in the attic, and then the light is just flush with the ceiling on the interior space. Those lights are not air sealed. They just have these huge gaps in them where air from the attic is just able to freely flow through the house. And that's how houses in Texas were built at the time. And so like every house in this neighborhood, every house probably in the city is built this way, which at a baseline level, terribly thermodynamically inefficient. When it gets to like 105 degrees in Texas and your AC is cracked on low, there's just hot air streaming in from your attic, which can get up to like 140 degrees because it's like insulated, and then there's these holes in the ceiling that go down. So part of my theory is that, okay, when it's 140 degrees, stuff in the attic is getting cooked, then it's off-gassing, and there's a lot of things that could be. There's formaldehyde and plywood and a lot of other things, and then that air is slowly leaking into the house through those recessed lights. And then I realized, wait a minute, a lot of these symptoms that I'm feeling and that other people are feeling could be explained by fiberglass. If you have fiberglass in your lungs, fiberglass isn't able to be digested very quickly by your lungs. The macrophages, when they try to bite onto it, because the fiber's too long, the fiber's longer than the cell is wide, the cell just like sort of grabs onto it, but then the digestive enzyme in the macrophage just like leaks out and wreaks havoc in your lungs. So that would explain why I feel like my lungs are burning. That would explain why my mom is coughing. And then it can cause a bunch of other things. If you're not breathing as well, maybe you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain now. Maybe now it's harder to remember things. And so through this diagnostic experiment of like getting all these different things and learning all these building science things, I think I may have solved the problem. And I think the solution might be you just cover the cam lights from the attic. And there's this cover you can get that you put over it, and then you seal it with foam. And yeah, that's this is my illustration of like how understanding how to make things and practicing the art of like taking stuff apart and understanding the basic components of it can solve problems that have been around for 20 years. And I think this is a much bigger problem than just this house. I think I may have solved a problem that a lot of people in this area may be experiencing without even knowing about it. Tell me I did a good job, because I was working so hard.
Yeah, that's nuts. Like I empathize a lot with that, because so for a long time my brother had bad allergies, and we thought it was, I mean, it was because he was allergic to cats, and the cat would sleep with him often. And so we were like, well, don't let the cat sleep with you. But we also...
It's a very straightforward solution.
Exactly. But at some point we also moved his bookshelf, and behind there was part of a window which had molded all down the drywall, and we didn't realize it because the bookshelf was there. And it's like, so I'm sure the cat was part of it, but also this mold was growing in his room, and we had no idea. And so it's like, yeah, like if you have a persistent problem, go after it. Like, you know, like you said, your mom's had this for years, like, you know, yeah, and now you're going after it. So that's great. Like if that solves the problem, that's really awesome. Also, yeah, what a tragedy that a large chunk of the country is probably living in houses older than, you know, I don't know, 40, 50 years, and probably have this problem or other problems related to things we didn't know about then. And yeah, you know, with a cap to cam lights, you know, maybe that would fix a large chunk of it. So yeah, very excited to see if that fixes it. Are you able to detect fiberglass on your like 2.5 detector, or?
No. And
okay.
The way fiberglass is detected is with a microscopy test. You just take a sample and you like look at it under a microscope. And my dad, through some sort of a liquidation auction at like a hospital or something, bought these really these very expensive, but he paid very little for them, like medical grade microscopes. And they're super old. They're very analog. It's just optics. There's no digital display in them. And so when I had this idea that it may be fiberglass, I was like, hey, don't you have a microscope? Let's whip that out. And took a sample, and you know, I know nothing about microscopy. I looked at things under a microscope in high school in biology lab, But I was like, I can figure most things out. I could figure out how this works. So what I did was I went to the fiberglass installation and I took a piece of tape and I put the tape over the fiberglass and then put it on a slide and then looked at what that looked like. And I was like, okay, it looks like these semi-transparent fibers and they're about this big. And then I just took a blank slide and I put it on there and looked and saw, okay, this is just what a slide looks like. And it looks kind of dirty and it's got some bubbles in it and like, okay, but it looks pretty clean. And then I went around the house and enlisted the help of my whole family. I gave them the task, take this piece of tape and stick it to somewhere where there shouldn't be fiberglass and then bring it back and let's look at it under the microscope. And so in every slide they brought back, I saw at least 3 pieces of fiberglass. And these pieces are very small. And in some parts of the house, like a foosball table that has been parked directly underneath a cam light, my sister got a sample from there and brought it back to the microscope. And it looked like the sample that I had taken from the piece of fiberglass, which,
Wow.
okay, this confirms my theory. But it felt so cool to, like, going into this, not knowing anything, feeling like I was chasing a ghost, to now, okay, I've sort of got my legs underneath me. Fiberglass is a potential thing, and fiberglass would behave in this way, and here's my method of detecting it, and let's develop a theory and test it, and okay, yeah, this is consistent with what my hypothesis would have been. If it's coming down from the can lights, it would be more concentrated down there. Yeah, so that has felt really good. I wanted to say also, this feels like tying back to GPT-3 of like stuff is just improving so much faster, and you can't have a book anymore about home construction. Because things are changing so rapidly. There's so much information. I remembered my previous point also. So I'll tie both of those together. The imperative of keeping up to date in information is so much stronger now because things are changing so much faster. So basically everything I'm doing, I feel like if I apply any sort of thought into it of like, what's the best way to classify these images? If I try to go from knowledge I already have in my head, 9 out of 10 times that information is stale, no matter what the thing is that I'm doing. So you sort of need... the same is true of this building science problem of like the best way to do things 20 years ago of building these houses so that the air was coming in fresh, so that the house could breathe. That idea is outdated, and it really takes a rigorous audit of all of the things in the space. Coming into this house with this vague notion of like something in here is wrong and I'm not sure what it is. It could be anything, and it's a very difficult process to like go through all of the different things it could be and try to figure out, is there a better way to be doing this thing? In this case, having the recessed lights makes it so that the house is very leaky, and so and that is no longer best practice. Best practice is now like you seal your house as much as possible, and you put the insulation on the outside of your house, and that makes so much more sense because now if you're cold, you put a jacket on. You don't stuff the insulation between your ribs, but that's effectively what we're doing in this old style of building houses, putting insulation between the studs. And so this is the point that I was going to make earlier that I had forgotten. This poses this problem of like when we have GPT-3 that can just be churning out information that looks like information. And it's so much easier to create stuff. It's so much easier to have a blog. It's so much easier to publish YouTube videos. The problem ceases to be that there's a scarcity of information, and it's just difficult to get the one book on construction from your local library. The problem now becomes curation. The problem is now, how do you figure out what the right thing is, given this swamp of like, here's all the different things it could possibly be. And I think that's... I'm very interested to see how that changes the landscape of what the world looks like. When anyone can put something on Amazon, the algorithm of how to figure out what the best thing is of those becomes much more important. It becomes much less about here's the one thing that's made, and we have gatekeepers so that we have gatekeepers preventing you from getting any information that's not the most valuable. Now it becomes this problem of how do we find the best thing among this sea of available things when everyone has published 1,000 books based on their own thoughts in GPT-3. How might we find the best books of those that are actually meaningful? And that's a difficult problem.
Yeah, this is why OpenAI didn't release GPT-3 it's why they're doing it very slowly. And when you sign up, you actually have to agree to terms, and like part of the terms are like, I will not use this in election campaigns to disseminate like information basically, because like what if you what if you have, and you could make a million different bots to troll the internet with disinformation. So they're very worried about that, and who's to say that this terms of service actually do anything? But they're being very aware that you can use this to actually like control people's emotions and brains by posting on the internet with it. So that's super interesting. The other two thoughts I had were your brother was looking for a business idea. It might be a very good business idea to try to install these cam light caps in every house that he could possibly go to. That sounds like a really good thing. If nothing else, it'll help with heating and cooling costs, but it could also potentially help with this fiberglass problem.
Yes.
And then the second thing was my very favorite way of dusting, which I've discovered, is so we have this really big HEPA filter. I move it to a room, and I use a battery-powered leaf blower, and I blow the whole room, and then I walk out the door and close it for a couple hours. And it works really well. Like you see the red light go on in the HEPA filter, and then a couple hours later it's blue again, which means it's cleared everything out.
That might work. Smart.
That might work for fiberglass.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. That's genius. Oh, I love that. And a HEPA filter can just be like, a box fan with a HEPA filter duct tape to it, so I don't have to subject my fancy, expensive air filter to that environment. That is so much easier than what I was going to do, which is like meticulously wipe down all the surfaces. Yeah, you just get it airborne, and you wear a mask, and you like wear clothes that are going to.
You may want to do that first. Like I usually vacuum first. And then leaf blow and then vacuum again. And that's how I'll do that, I don't know, once a month or something to all the rooms in the house. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. And you do that once a month. That's so smart. That's exactly what you should be doing. Oh, I love it. Yeah, and then all the dust and all the like dust mites and everything would just get cleaned out. Oh man. I'm so happy we have this podcast. If for nothing else, then for that leaf blowing idea.
Leaf blowing duster tips with Chris and Christian.
Maybe that can be part of the service that my brother offers if he starts a business with this. Is like, here's our process. We go through and we seal all the can lights, and then we clear out all the dust from your house with our very professional looking box fans with Merv HEPA filters strapped to them. Yeah. And we just get a leaf blower in there and blow everything out. I wonder if that would be an effective way to vacuum. I guess not for the smaller particles.
Like it'll still stuff will still settle on the floor, but the stuff that stays around for a long time, that's why I just turn the HEPA filter on full blast, and that'll get the small stuff, but the big stuff I still vacuum afterwards to get like the big stuff that falls.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna try that later today. I'm gonna do that. I had a thought also with your GPT-3. I realized that the way that they set it up is very clever as an API, because now, as they're slowly giving out access to this, if someone did try to use this nefariously of having a fake news stream of stuff getting posted, made to look like real people, but with a very particular agenda, well, because it's an API, if they can find any one of those posts, they can trace that back to, it came from this API account. Let's shut that down immediately. And then also we can see all the other stuff they have. So now we can share with Facebook, hey, here's the content that you might see that would be coming from this one source. That's a very clever way to do it. I appreciate that they're being so careful with it.
Yeah, which is why they're doing it that way. Some people have already made models almost as big as GPT-3, so like it's going to be disseminated anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're trying to be careful, at least so it doesn't happen all at once.
It's good that we can practice it in a controlled way. We can start greasing the wheels of how does this happen and what are the sort of bad things people try to do with this. And if I was GPT-3, I may almost want to test this on applicants who I thought were going to use it for nefarious purposes, just to see what they do and have it in a controlled way, and then just like watch them very closely. It feels sort of like an information vaccine. And then when these models are decentralized, when they're not in the hands of one place, but just like, anyone with a Raspberry Pi can be generating a novel or publishing 10,000 terrible Facebook posts, we as a society will have practiced what to do with that and what that looks like, and hopefully be able to have a better response to it. Man, how crazy is the world? Things are moving so quickly, and I love it. What an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens. Sometimes it's fear-inducing, and other times it's super exciting. So
yeah,
hopefully, I'm an optimist generally. So hopefully, it's on the exciting side. Yeah.
Same. Yeah, and I think that every strength is a weakness. I think you can look at anything and see positive or negative aspects of it. Like, are cars good? Well, in one respect, yes, because they increase social mobility, and I think you can attribute the middle class, the existence of the middle class, I think you can attribute to cars, and like the existence of suburbs, that not everyone has to be living in these huge mega cities. You can be like 40 minutes out and still make it to the centralized place. Before we had internet, which is arguably a better tool to be able to do that. And at the same time, my gosh, if Henry Ford knew what effect this would have on carbon emissions, would he and pollution and the side effects of fracking and the negative effects of the oil industry, like, would he have made the same choice? Probably. But you can view the car from a very negative standpoint and see that as negative. And I agree with you that I prefer to see things as positive. And yes, any new thing will have some negative externalities. And I think the game is not limit new things. The game is make as many new things as possible to try to fix the problems that you've created with the other things. And I don't think anyone would say that we are worse off than if we were living naked in nature. I think disease is down and humans live much longer, and it's so much easier to get food and an hour of light. And I love that more knowledge is being disseminated faster. And that's the world we're living in. And if you've got a problem with it, then make a new thing to fix it. That's my philosophical stance on the optimism of technology.
Yeah. So that's all I got. I'm excited to go to this next week, do some more AI stuff, do some more SaaS stuff. What do you got going on this next week?
I have one more thing that I'm very excited to talk about. Right behind me, for people watching this on YouTube, is the Makermade 2.0 CNC machine. Still in its box. I don't know if this is going to get to be set up and unwrapped this week. But oh boy, am I thinking about all kinds of things I can do with this. It is a CNC machine that costs about $1,000 that can cut a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So you input your design of, like, I would like these pieces cut out in this particular shape, and you set the plywood up, and then it does it and routes it all out and then spits out, here you go, here's all your pieces. So you can use this to print out furniture. And you can use this to print out signs. And oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to make with this. The thing that finally pushed me over the edge was prototyping this window ERV unit. I want to be able to make a box in a replicatable way that'll be the right size and that has air vents in the right place. And so with this, I'm going to get some plywood. I'm going to sketch out a design on my iPad, maybe with SketchUp, and then print it out, and then it was a little too big on this side, and this part needs to be a little sealed, so I'll change my model, and then after 3 or 4 iterations, it's the perfect ERV unit. Then I can do what we talked about last week, which is here are my plans. If you have a CNC machine, print out this thing, buy this ERV from this place, buy these 2 computer fans from this place, and pop this in your window, and boom, you've got fresh air coming in. We have solved this problem created by modernity of having airtight buildings and having indoor air pollution. Maybe pair this with the leaf blower HEPA filter method, and you'll have fresh, clean air in your house. So that's very cool. I may be as excited about the CNC machine. Well, that's not true. I was going to say, as you are about your computer, but you'll be able to do much cooler things with your computer. I am very excited about the CNC machine.
Printing real things is pretty cool. It's too bad plywood's like $80 a sheet right now. But,
yeah, right.
Yeah. But that's awesome. Yeah, I'm super, super excited to see what you come up with. Yeah.
I was going to say a way to save money would be you could print out a chair from a piece of plywood, but it'd be so much cheaper just to buy the chair.
Buy the chair.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that'll calm down soon. All right. That's all I get.
That's cool. That's all I got too.
Then I will see you next week. Goodbye.
See ya.